Hello, 12th class IC students. Vanna Shrasthav greets you all in a succeeding class of poetry with Alfred Lord Tennyson's poem Crossing the Bar. Dear students, before we commence on, let us be introduced with a great British poet, Alfred Lord Tennyson. Alfred Lord Tennyson, who was born in 1809, was a Victorian-era British writer, novelist, and poet. He attained his basic education and then went to the Trinity College, Cambridge University. His major work includes In Memoriam, The Charge of the Light Brigade, Idylls of the King. Tennyson was appointed as a poet laureate in 1850 in succession to Wordsworth. Tennyson's poetry brought a new sense of metrical variety, rich descriptive imagery, and exquisite verbal melodies to literature. Not only did his writings reflect upon the Victorian era, but they also reflected upon himself. His poetry is easily understood by all generations. The major themes of his poems are geological time and evolutionary history, historical or mythological past, personal past, friendship, social and political concerns, contemporary science versus Christian beliefs. Children, let me tell you that behind writing this poem, there is an interesting story. That this poem, Crossing the Bar, was written by Tennyson in 1889, 3 years before his death. The poem was conceived as an expression of thanksgiving. Tennyson, then 80, had recovered from a serious illness. Biographers point out that the poem was written on the back of an envelope in 20 minutes, the time taken by the ferry crossing from Leamington to Yarmouth on the Isle of Wight. The poem gained immediate popularity and was eventually set to music. It was one of the anthems sung 3 years later at the poet's funeral in Westminster Abbey. At Tennyson's request, the poem is included as the final poem in all editions of his poetry. So, students, the poem Crossing the Bar is perhaps the last and best poem written by Tennyson. The poem illustrates an accepting attitude towards death. The theme describes the poet's fearlessness towards death and his firm belief in God and the eternity of life. The title, Crossing the Bar, itself symbolizes traveling from life to death. It is thought that Tennyson wrote it as his own elegy, as the poem has a tone of finality about it. It is an allegorical significance. This poem has an allegorical significance, means revealing a hidden meaning or giving the moral values. It is an objective poem describing personal feelings about a voyage across the sandbar deep into the sea with symbolic meaning. So now let us go with the substance of the poem to comprehend it nicely. In the opening line of the poem, the speaker tells about the setting of the sun and rise of the evening star. A call reaches his ears. He is about to set out to sea, but he hopes that the sea will be calm and it won't make the mournful sound of waves beating against the sandbar. The sandbar is a ridge of sand built up by current along a shore. Here the journey across the bar is symbolic of crossing from the harbor of life into the dark, unknown sea or afterlife. And the clear call is the call of impending death. The speaker wishes for a tide which does not have a sound or foam and it seems asleep. He also wishes that the huge wave will carry everything back to the boundless depth of the ocean. Here, the tide is suggestive of a smooth and peaceful transition of the speaker from life to death. Then he hears the sound of the evening bell at twilight. After twilight, there is nothing but the dark, and here the evening bell is suggestive of the death knell, a traditional ringing of a bell to signal that a person has died. Then, in the concluding lines, the speaker announces that the day is at end and there is the sound of the evening bell. After that, there will be darkness. The speaker hopes that at the time of his departure, no one will cry. He knows that he might be taken beyond limits of time and space to see God. Here, the speaker hopes to see the pilot after he has crossed the bar. Tennyson himself has explained this by saying that the pilot had been aboard all along. Pilot means God, identifying him as that divine and unseen who is always guiding us. So, this was the substance of the poem, children. So, through this poem, we get the two main themes. This poem contains two main themes. First is the immortality of soul. Crossing the bar brings home the idea that death is not the end of life. It is our body that dies. Our soul is deathless. Being a part of the supreme soul, that is God, death is a gate to another life. We should welcome it and accept it calmly. And that's why he says in the poem, and may there be no sadness or farewell when I embark. And the second theme is the faith in God. That faith in God is very important in life. It is this faith which helps us live life meaningfully. In Tennyson's time, people were facing a crisis of faith in the wake of Darwin's theory of evolution and many other scientific discoveries. Tennyson has himself been troubled by the conflict between religion and science. And here in this poem, he seems to have overpowered all doubts in his mind. That is why he feels that after death, he is sure to see his pilot. Pilot means God face to face. And he writes in the poem, I hope to see my pilot face to face when I have crossed the bar. Death will enable him to meet God, whom he rightly calls his pilot. God has been guiding him through all ups and downs in life. No one else is better guide than God in life. It is again God who will help him through death. So today we have gone with the introduction of the poet and the substance of the poem, students. In our next meet, we will go with the explanation of the poem in detail. Till that time, have a nice time. Thank you.